One, only make promises to yourself that are actually realistic. Two is the redefining of success, that success is not doing things at 100% at the compromise of your health.
Welcome to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast, where we empower women with the latest insights and advice on holistic health. From cutting-edge medical research to practical wellness tips, our mission is to help you thrive at every stage of life. Join us as we explore topics ranging from hormonal balance and reproductive health to nutrition and mental well-being. Whether you're seeking solutions for a specific health concern or simply want to enhance your overall wellness, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this journey to better health together. This is the Advanced Women's Health Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast. I am Dr. Michelle Mussar, and I practice at the Sudbury office. And today I'm joined with Dr. Tracy-Lynn Reside, who also practices in the Sudbury office periodically. She makes the long trek from North Bay for those who are familiar with the area. And today we have a little bit of a different podcast. We're going to riff off of a podcast that was recently released by Dr. Lauren Dingwell and Dr. Alessandra O'Terry, talking about our health habits and our non-negotiables. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this and have a little bit of a different take because both Dr. Tracy-Lynn and I are both moms. I'm actively in the throes of postpartum. My little one is not yet one. And Dr. Tracy-Lynn, you have how many kids?
3, 2 teenagers and a toddler. So yeah.
Yes. So it's going to be a little bit of a different approach in terms of what our non-negotiables and habits look like. Not to say that this is going to be exclusively helpful or useful for mothers, but might have a little bit of a different spin on it. And so I'll kick us off a little bit with one of my habits that I find I discuss with patients often, and it's a really hard sell. People are most resistant, I want to say, to this thing is meal planning. And it's something that I find makes or breaks my life. If I don't have a plan, I have planned to fail. It's that cheesy line, but it's the truth. And so I find what is most successful for us is on Sundays, I'm having a look at, okay, what proteins do I have that I want to use? What do I have in my fridge? What do I need in my fridge? And I'm just making the plan for what the week looks like. And I'm also really taking into account and consideration what's on my social calendar, right? Do I have kids in activities? Do I have a work event? What's our capacity been like? Have we been kicked in the teeth with illness recently and it's low? But I'm just having a peek at, like, again, where am I at? How much cooking do I want to do? What's on our calendar? How quick and efficient does this need to be? And then just also taking into consideration that I know myself that come Friday, I'm a little over it. And so Friday's got to be a lazy meal, but I also don't really want to compromise on that being a nutritious meal as a consistent rule, right? And so, like, inevitably there are some outliers to this, but for the most part, that's kind of what I'm looking at up front. And then I'm making a plan. I literally have like a note. I should make it like get a dry erase. This is not environmentally friendly. I have paper notes beside my fridge and we'll write down, Monday through Friday and have a plan of what things look like. But I also create some flexibility in it, that it doesn't have to be rigid. So one, I'm looking at, like, what am I in the mood to eat? Because sometimes I'm like, stir fry is like, sign me up. And other days I'm like, if I have to eat another stir fry, like, off with your head. So it's really about, like, taking those things into consideration too, about what my time looks like. And then again, how many of those components can I prep in advance? Right. So that's when we're looking at dinner. This is the whole system. I'm just trying to, like, figure out what are the components of my system, because I'm like, they're so inherent that I forget that there are parts to. But that's my dinner plan that we kind of map out. And then I really like to have a little bit of a lunch plan. And so my lunch plans often, but not always, are going to look like some sort of hearty salad that I can prep on the Sunday that's going to last me the better part of the week, or like a soup. Or again, I am a big advocate and proponent of super cubes, or like any kind of knockoff version of said cube, where, like, if I'm going to cook a chili, I'm going to cook a bigger chili, and then I'm going to freeze some of that into both family sizes, but also individual lunch sizes for my thermos for my lunch. And so it's one of these where I'm having some sort of a plan for that. And then again, making extra protein from dinner so that can kind of carry forward or even rotate throughout my lunches, so that if I'm having the same salad throughout the week, I'm like, one day was with chicken, the other day was with fish, the next was with sausage, and I'm still hitting my protein goals. Because if we haven't kind of already gotten a little bit of a hint of this, protein is a big part
It's
of my
important.
non-negotiables.
Yeah.
And like 90 grams of protein is what I really, really strive for. There are inevitably days where like I don't hit that right on the nose, but then it comes back into my Sunday recap where I'm like, okay, where did the wheels fall off and how can I strategize on that?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've kind of come to in terms of strategizing on that recently has been shredding chicken. Honestly, I have a Dutch oven and I'm apparently very excited about this. And I throw chicken in there with whatever seasonings you want. So you can change that up so it's not, again, always boring. And I throw it in my mixer, or you can use a hand mixer, and it shreds it up in like 30 seconds. Because again, as a mom, I don't have time. I need it faster, more efficient, easier, like work smarter, not harder. And so it shreds it right away. And then boom, I have protein for the week. So if I have a breakfast and I don't have enough, I add a little shredded chicken. If I have leftovers from dinner, but not enough, I add some shredded chicken, but in a way that like doesn't feel boring because I'm changing all the other things that go into it, because the goal isn't for us to be like repetitive, redundant kind of monsters, but I find that really helps. What is your kind of take on all of this?
Yeah, I totally agree that Sunday meal prep is kind of the core. And I would even expand it for us. Like we're, again, with 2 teenagers and a toddler, you know, when the toddler came into the mix, it really added like not just one layer of complexity, and especially in that as the older kids, like I've had this conversation a few times. As your kids get older, they need you in a very different way, right? So, and it is not less. So anybody who's waiting for your kids to get older, not a good plan because it's different, right? So it adds a lot of like just those moving pieces. And so for us, that like sort of, we actually do on Saturday when we're having coffee, we'll have like a, you know, in breakfast, we'll do kind of like a CEO meeting where it's like we've actually graduated to a digital calendar very recently, which was a big purchase and a lot of research. But for the last, probably 6 years, we've had a 6 foot by 4 foot. So, I mean, it takes up my entire living room wall, like living dining room space. It's 6 weeks. And without that, I don't know how it would function. I have a smaller one that goes in our fridge that was for meal planning, but that we live and die by that. We switched to digital because it was actually taking me almost 2 hours to fill it out every month because there's so much. Yeah. And I'm like, so it's a new adventure for us to do digital. We'll see how it goes. But meal planning is the anchor to it. And I agree with you. I've been, you know, I myself have felt resistance to meal planning at different seasons, like in the past. And it's definitely because it feels daunting. It doesn't have to be. I think that, right? Like, you know,
I think it's, if I may interject, I find that decision fatigue around food is so real. And it's so real when you're planning like 6 lunches and your dinners and all the thing. And then who likes this food and doesn't like that food and whatever. Like it's so much energy that goes into deciding what you're going to eat. And I find it actually takes way less energy to just be like, okay, so this is what we're doing. And we just like, this is what we're doing. And it's one decision for the week instead of having to like open that wound over and over and over again. And like breakfasts for us are really clear because I'm like, I am a creature of crazy habit where I can eat eggs for forever and ever and be fine. I've recently gotten into a protein pancake kick. Thank you, Dr. Lauren Dingwall. If anyone's following us on socials, you're very aware of the protein pancake kick. But nonetheless, breakfast, like the kids have a handful of rotation of things. We have that, and then figuring out the rest of this. But it's just the less decisions that need to be made, gosh, the easier it is. Yeah. And so I find that I agree. When you feel like it's already so hard to make the decision about like every day, you're like, I come home from work and I don't know what the plan is. I'm like, that's my nightmare. That actually, in my opinion, requires substantially more energy than it does to have a look at it at the beginning of the week. And when this is a new skill that you're developing, I can wholeheartedly appreciate that it feels daunting and scary and challenging. And I too have felt that resistance at periods of time. It's really come out of necessity that like we do this, and it's actually so much easier. Like there's no decision making. I literally wake up that morning or the night before and I look at my fridge and I'm like, what do I need to pull from my freezer? Which I think is another part of, truthfully, this is a privileged place to be. And I want to acknowledge that. But I think that if you have the resources, having a freezer, particularly a stand-up one, in my opinion, is like a game changer because one, you can buy things in bulk when they're on sale. When we're talking about proteins, which I'm a sucker for a sale. Like I love to save money. I know some people on the team are like, I buy what I want and that's that. And I'm like, me too, I'm going to buy it on sale and then have it when I want it anyway.
Yes.
But nonetheless, having for me a freezer full of protein makes a really big difference, because if I'm not running out of anything, I'm not scrambling, and I'm looking and I'm being like, okay, this is what I have and what are the odds and ends that I need to make this make sense. And I appreciate that that isn't something that's accessible to everyone. If it is, it makes a huge difference. So just something to consider kind of in that process. But
yeah. And I think the other objection that I'll sometimes experience myself or hear is either from the person who's managing the meal prepping, which is often the mom, but not always. And then, complaints from kids or spouses or, other people living in the house, is the sort of consistency is boring kind of idea. But I also think that's more of if you haven't actually done this for a long period of time, what you realize is that's not actually the case. Like, you can have your rotating meals, and we do that. Similar to what you're talking about with the salad. I will always on a Sunday, like, I have about 6 different sauces that I'll rotate, and I'll usually make 2. And, depending on what I'm kind of feeling like. And I will also have a salad dressing in my fridge that's like not terrible, right? Like something pre-made. So I've got a couple options, right? Where it's like, and if we've had a lot of sports tournaments, so we're getting home on Sunday night. So then it's like, I still meal plan, but it's different, right? It's like, okay, this week's going to be very much, what do I have in the freezer? There's going to be definitely some repeats, or, we're having rice and chicken and vegetables, and we'll flavor it differently. Like, you just have to really, and I have a handout that I'll give a lot of patients where I call it sort of like my plan C meals, where it's like plan A didn't work and plan B didn't work. And so we'll have breakfast for dinner sometimes, and we'll do
exactly.
Yeah. And listen, if you're worried about variety, or your kids are like, these are the nights that they love the most, right? If it's having protein pancakes for dinner, they think it's great. They remember those things. So I think that when I hear non-negotiables, sometimes I feel like there's a rigidity to it. And that's actually not how it plays out in my life. It's more that there are things that I know have to anchor for us to really just, I'm not even going to say thrive, survive a lot of these busy, chaotic times. And meals are one of them. And I totally agree. The idea that, yes, it's an upfront effort, but this is a delayed gratification, process, because we all know, and we can all feel that, like, I'm getting home at 5:00 and now I have to figure out what's for dinner. That is, again, one of my worst nightmares.
The little rascals, like, I don't know about you, but when I pick up my kids from daycare and school, they're like famished immediately, like, and they have no chill about it. And respectfully, they probably get that from me, because I also have no chill when I'm hungry. So I've got to respect it a little bit. But it's one of these where, like, if I'm tired dealing with their overwhelm, trying to regulate for everyone, like, again, just having this emotion. Also, shout out to the slow cooker, shout out to the air fryer, but like things that, like, you can throw things in that have slow or quick, warm up, like the air fryer, and I don't have to babysit you. Love that. And I love a slow cooker meal in the morning. Like, I throw everything in a pot and I run out the door. We call it a day. Like, again, one of my laziest or most efficient.
It's
meals.
Almost like having an extra pair of hands, right?
100%.
And I sometimes have seen patients that, and I've probably done this myself, if I'm being honest, where I'll like get a new, less as I've gotten older, but certainly when my older kids were younger, it was like, I'm going to buy this thing because it's going to help, right? There's very few tools, but they're, right? Like, a lot of it you don't
But the ones that make a difference.
But the ones that make a difference,
Oh my
I
gosh.
find air fryer for sure, slow cooker or Instapot. And the other thing that we have, and it's a $30 one, is that we have like one of those like little vacuum, I can't remember what they're called, but they're with the containers or the bags, and it's like $20 or $30. It's rechargeable. And it allows, though, if I'm doing chili as an example, I can have lie them flat. And so I don't have a big freezer, but we're able to cram like quite a bit in, right? So that.
No, that's genius. We love a storage solution.
Yeah.
We love a storage solution.
Little things like that make a big difference. You don't have to make it complicated. But yeah, I think there's simple solutions around where the consistency is my non-negotiable. And I always say to patients, worst case scenario, take the 5 minutes the night before, look at your next day. Like, meal planning didn't happen this week. Try to do the 24 hours in advance for 2 reasons. It's going to make life a little bit easier. And the other one is that so many of us, our nervous systems are all over the place. We lead these busy lives and there's lots going on. And knowing tomorrow provides like a bit of a sense of safety, at least for me, right? Where it's like, you know what? I may not know Tuesday, but I know Monday.
Yeah.
And I can do that. And it's not an ideal week, but worst case scenario, if I can just plan out the next 3 meals for me, like my kids, they make their lunches or those are things that we have on hand where they kind of can pick it out themselves. And breakfast, we're very much, you're getting a smoothie bowl or you're getting eggs. Like those are your options during the
Pick
week.
your poison. Yeah.
Right. Like, and I don't train them during the school year. In the summer, we'll try a few new things. And then as they've gotten older, they can do a bit of that. But now we have a toddler. So it's like egg sandwiches. That's what he likes right now. Like, that's what he's having.
Yeah. You figure it
Yeah,
out.
you just figure it out. Yeah.
But I'm glad that was something that was on both of our lists.
Mhm.
Something else that is relatively new to my routine in terms of the level of consistency that I have provided to it is movement. So I non-negotiably, and I'll never go back. I don't think I ever could, but every week I'm heading up the gym 3 times a week. And I say this, I think that I need to give a really big caveat here that I had to redefine what success looked like when I started to hold myself to a consistency standard. And it's something, again, I talk about with patients all the time, but that for me, this had originally started, I had done like a workout program and I was like, I'm going to rehab because I had a lot of musculoskeletal issues that needed conditioning and exercise was going to be the cornerstone of fixing this. And I was like, I need to be consistent with it. I'm doing this workout program where I think it was something like 5 or 6 days a week that it was like a 20 or 30-minute workout. And I'm like, I'm going to commit to doing this at 100% for these 4 to 6 weeks, all of these workouts. And the only exception in which I can't do them is if I am sick, if I like doing the workout would actually be more harmful than helpful to my mental and physical health. But I'm also going to push myself to carve out the time for it because it's really easy to get to the end of the day and be like, well, I need to sleep instead of do this. But it was about being like, okay, well, I can't touch my phone until I do that. Right.
Yeah.
And so what that process did, and I don't work out like that anymore, but what that process taught me was like how to be in integrity with myself, which honestly, I get chills every time. I sobbed on my last workout when I had like accomplished all of that. I think I missed like 3, but like was a mess. But I had taught myself that I can trust myself to do what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most damaging things that we can do is choose like make a promise or a commitment to ourselves or to somebody else and to not fulfill it. Because all we do is we teach our subconscious that I can't trust me, that I can't do it, right?
Yeah.
And that just creates so much more barrier to success. And so it's actually
doing
better
it the next time.
Yeah, it's actually better to be honest and be like, I don't have capacity for that right now.
Yeah.
One of the things that you're going to find is not on my list is getting 8 hours of sleep right now because I have a newborn. Well, not a newborn. He's almost a year old. Anyways, but I have a baby and it's just not in my deck of cards. And I do my best for sure, but it's not a non-negotiable because it's just not realistic for my life. And so I strive, but it's not on there, right? But I think that it's helpful for me to do that, to be like, I'm not currently yet ready to make that change, but it's coming. And so just keeping myself in that place of integrity. So my 2 takeaways from that is 1, only make promises to yourself that are actually realistic. 2 is the redefining of success, that success is not doing things at 100% at the compromise of your health. We recently had an internal health challenge at the clinic. And I found that I wasn't actually meeting those metrics. I found it was still really inspiring. It got me moving more. Like there was a lot of good that came from it. But I was like, I'm actually not striving to win. And like, I think that for me I was like, I can either walk or I can get in my Pilates and strength training and I can't hit my steps and do both at the same time. And I'm like, this is actually better for my mental health and my consistency in these other places. Yeah. And so there was that. But again, it's just about redefining the why of what you're doing. Is it to check a box or is it actually in alignment with your health and goals? Because if I am weak and unwell and I'm going to go to the gym and get injured, I'm like, that's actually out of alignment with my goals because I'm trying to get strong and healthy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a good point. And I think this idea around being realistic and not letting yourself off the hook, but being realistic about what is happening. And this is where often we need some help. So I can absolutely say I had a bit of a career transition during COVID because we had moved right before COVID to the north. I had 2 kids at the time. Then I got pregnant. I also turned 40 at the same time. So a lot of transition in life really quickly. And my systems that I'd had in place for a while, which had been working, no longer worked. And there was a period of time where I didn't really reach out for support. I wish I'd done it earlier, but that's life. There was lots of reasons and it wasn't, and so really, I think I got to a point where I felt quite burnt out. There weren't a lot of systems. And I was like, I need to go back and see my ND. and then it was, what are going to be the things that I can do that are actually going to make. And so for me, my sleep had been really bad. My toddler was now 2, and that had to become the thing. And I wanted to go back to meal planning. We really weren't. I wanted to start movement, but without the capacity to sleep even 6 hours, broken, or 8 hours a night, I wasn't going to be able to do that. And I needed some objectivity. I needed someone to sort of be like, hey, let's start here because this is actually the thing that's going to give you more capacity. And that was hard for me. It's not my personality. A lot of us want to take it all on and we think, right? And then we don't follow through because it's
and then
we
hurts
judge
your morale.
ourselves.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
So making it realistic, and this is where working with us, truthfully, is really, it can be a game changer just in terms of identifying some of those things. Because it's like we're focusing over here, but like if you're, again, burnt out, stressed, whatever, things are hitting the fan, whatever they may be. And like, I can't ask more of you, right? So it's like, where can we delegate? Where can we refill? Where can we recharge? But what needs to actually change to give you capacity, right?
Yeah.
And so like my sleep situation, it needs to change and I need to have capacity to change that. And I'm just not right. I'm not there at this moment in time. No. So we're coasting on that front, but I'm realistic about it, right? So I think that's such a crucial part of all of this is really being able to identify what's realistic. I wholeheartedly agree.
And sometimes you have to start with one, right? You have to start with one thing and then you can stack and build on. I know that Lauren and Alice talked about habit stacking and all of that is true. And you have and again, that's why working with an ND or working with a healthcare provider that can, and then I'm biased obviously, but I think our team is really good at this where we're going to meet you where you're at, know where we can push and not push because we can see, and then that accountability piece is also helpful, right? It's funny that you say movement because that's actually the next piece that I'm adding in and I'm not there yet. Like the goal is eventually 3 days a week. I started with 1. I got that consistent.
That's where it goes.
Now I built 2, right? These things are not like they don't happen overnight. And then you have a transition. For me, having backups is important. So I have sort of my ideal. So the non-negotiable is that I move, right? Every day I sort of have to look at what is my capacity. If I had a plan to go to the gym at 6 a.m., but I had a kid or 2 up for 2 hours in the middle of the night, the non-negotiable becomes, how do I still move? What does my body need? Does it need a stretch instead? And can I move that to a different time? Right. And so the non-negotiable is actually the check-in with myself, the check-in with what do I have the capacity for? Is this plan still reasonable? And how can I still meet my long-term goal? Because you're one day, right, still doing something. I followed through on the foundation, even if it didn't look like what I thought it would, is still a success.
It is,
right?
But it is. And this is where I would argue that should be the benchmark for success. Again, I'm not talking about competitive athletes here. I'm talking about our average Joe, right? And so I'm like, I think makes a lot of sense. And that's exactly what I'm stressing with all of this. And so movement, like I said, on my end, looks exactly like that. Last night was not a good night. We had power outages and had to check on kids because it was cold and it was the whole thing. And so with that, I wanted to do strength today. And I was like, you know what, we're going to do Pilates instead. And I still got out. But had it been not one of those, and I'm like, maybe we would have hopped on the treadmill. Maybe we would have done yoga, whatever that is. Or maybe I would have moved it to a different day in the week. But a couple of the things that I found have made a really big difference, at least when I was on more of a mat leave. I'm back. So I'm currently in a transition of figuring out the movement, or we're hitting it, which is great, is that I had 3 classes that were just in the schedule. I wouldn't book appointments around it. I wouldn't do anything around it unless that other thing trumped this somehow. But I made sure that this was as important as anything else for my kids, or as medical appointments, whatever, that it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I hit these classes. And what was nice is that I didn't have to think about it. Again, it eliminated the decision fatigue. I just knew that I went. And if something was off, then I would check in and do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But having that part was really helpful. The other part for me is I need to pay someone and get out of my house. And this serves so many purposes. 1, the finances motivates me. Two, I am not going to quit or go easy in a class because there are other people around and that holds me accountable. And I'll do the workouts because I'm much cheaper talk just solo. It requires way more effort to talk myself into going hard at home. But I have like much less of a hard time doing that. And I just had to be honest. And I trek for my gym. Like I trek 25 minutes each way and then do an hour class. So like it's a 2-hour commitment. I fortunately, again, am in a position where I have a partner who's really supportive. I also have the ability to make my schedule. And so, again, finding these times that work. But I find those were pieces that I had to be honest with myself about that I'm like, could I have a home gym and could this be more convenient? Yes. Am I going to do that well? No. History dictates that is a lie, right? That I can't do that. And so it was really helpful. And I would add one more piece to that, which is getting out and being in a group setting was really great for my mental health from a postpartum perspective, that having like a social group, seeing the same people kind of over and over again. As moms, it's really hard, or it can be really hard. It takes, I think, a lot of intention and effort to continue to have intentional relationships, specifically with other women, because it's just so easy for us to get swept up into the stuff. And so this was a way of like tackling two birds, one stone, right? That I got out of the house, I got movement in, I got social time. It was like check, 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 check. And so I saw the fruits of those labors. And it was really cool because this was like the first New Year's for me where I was like, I don't have to say that like, we're going to get moving this year. I'm like, we're moving. I'm like, we're just going to keep doing this. And I'm like, I can't see a life in which that isn't the case because of how rewarding it has been, in the same way that I feel that way about protein, right? Like, so it can be, it's, Dr. Alessandra talked about this in the last podcast. If you guys haven't checked it out, please go check out the episode. It's fantastic. But that when your habits get solid, they become way less effortful. And then it's just about, okay, cool. Where can I add more? And not in a like pathological, I need to be doing everything, but just in a, okay, what is the next step that gets me to the next level, that gets me to where I need to be? And like you talked about with transitions, sometimes things change and you're like, I had this locked and dialed and it was a non-issue. And then insert job change, life, whatever it is. And then it's just about kind of reassessing, okay, like maybe we're going back there, not because we failed it, but just because we have to be flexible and life is life. But then what is most important to work on so that we feel well, right?
Yeah. And I think that was an important and difficult sort of reframing for me. And I've had to do it many times in my career and as a parent and an ND over the last sort of 15 years, where you have a system, you have it locked in, and then things change. And there's a period of, okay, did I fail? And when I was younger, that was younger, early 30s, that was quite difficult. It took a lot of support, counseling, self-reflection, just growth in general, to sort of where now it's like, okay, it's just change. Right? Change. And yes, it looks different now. The failure would have been in either trying to do it in a way that is just no longer serving us, right? And being inflexible, or not finding this just sort of next version of it and letting go that it needs to look a certain way. And then now I know it's going to change again. Right? So now we have, right? Yeah. And that's
it always will. And it's okay that there's grief in that process, truthfully, because again, I think that this is touching on a specific thing for me anyways. There was grief in motherhood and postpartum. There was a lot of joy and a lot of love, and that goes without saying. But there's grief in the access to the things that I used to do, or in the body that used to be able to do them, right? I had a really rough postpartum experience with my first, where my body just did not recover exceptionally well. And so there were things that my favorite forms of exercise that I couldn't do. And that took a real toll. And like, again, I really sincerely had to grieve them, lick my wounds, build a bridge, and then just be like, okay, so what do I do to get to that place? Right. And just, I think can be really helpful as well in terms of just redefining it moving forward. I think that the failure is in the lack of in the setting up shop there and not trying again. Right. And not finding the next iteration that makes sense for you. But I would argue that it's actually success when patients fall off, when we fall off, and you get back up and you do it faster than you did last time. If you used to fall off for like a year and a half, that you're falling off for like weeks or days or months instead, right? Like I would argue that all of that is progress. You're learning a new way how to do things, right? So there, even that, I think there's a reframe in there that is helpful instead of the bash that can happen, because we don't get better when we beat ourselves up.
No, and there's quite a lot of sort of physiological and psychological evidence behind that too. I'll have these conversations with patients often where it's like, listen, if you were doing something consistent for a few weeks and then you missed a week, you didn't lose the 6 weeks. You only lose the 6 weeks if you don't pick it back
That
up,
part. That
right?
part. Yes,
Yeah.
it's 100%. Like the canyon was not built with a couple drops of water. It happened over the time. You don't get ripped going to the gym and having the world's best exercise like workout once. It happens when you do it consistently at whatever your good capacity looks like. And some
Yeah.
days that's going to be 100%, some days it's going to be 2. And that still matters, that it's the consistency that matters, not the perfection of the thing. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Some of the other things that I had on my non-negotiable list, water is an easy one for me, and I lovingly can't relate to my patients who can't drink water because I am identifiable by my water bottles. I always have been because I am so consistent with them, but I consistently am getting a minimum of 2 liters of water. What are some of your kind of relationships relative to fluids? Is that a challenge for you? Walk me through
It
that.
is a challenge for me. I was like I bartended and I was a waitress. So for breakfast restaurants or bars for like a couple decades before this version. Actually, I think my last shift was like I was like in third year of CCNF at the Nonnegotiable college. And so I lived in a world where sort of like fluids were coffee, right? Like that was
Oh, no.
yeah. Oh, it's not good. And so I will struggle. So I have to this is where I think that again, this conversation around systems becomes really important. So
Strategy, right?
yeah. So I do use like tech for certain things. So I do have like right now it's a Fitbit. I saved up for it. I got the absolute cheapest one. I think it was $80, right? Like it's not fancy. I know that the algorithms it doesn't matter. Like I'm not in a position where investing in a couple $100 device makes sense for me, but it does a few important things. So number one, it buzzes when I haven't moved in 50 minutes. This is a huge deal, right? It has a reminder on it twice a day that it'll buzz and it's on my, like, you can't ignore it. And that reminds me that I need to go fill up my water. This little, like, so there's too much going on in here for me to rely on, right? And I think this comes back to your idea around making appointments. I think that assuming that we can manage all of these things and hold ourselves accountable is not setting you up for success, right? So we need help. We need support, whether that's...
I have a naturopath. Like, you know what I mean?
So do I.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
I think leveraging other people can be helpful. I think the conversation about leveraging technology is also really key. One of the things that I find patients sometimes struggle with is like taking their supplements consistently. And one of my like best hacks around this, truthfully, is I'm like, set alarms. But here's the kicker. You don't turn off the alarm until supplements are in your mouth.
Yeah.
Not you snooze it if you can't get to it right away. That's fine. Let that bugger go off all day. It will annoy you enough at some point in time that you will get up and do the thing.
You still have to do the thing. Yeah.
but like it doesn't get turned off until they are ingested, until the task is finished. And so sometimes it's about, again, strategizing on like, okay, how do we tackle water between coffees? Is it that we're setting alarms? Is it, do you need a fun water bottle that you actually like that's too expensive that you don't want to lose and that you're going to haul around with you? Like, how do we make it fun and work for you? And everybody's going to have different things that make them tick in terms of like that motivation. Like I said, for me, I know that sometimes I need to spend money, which is annoying, but it's true. And I just have to acknowledge that's the case. But again, being able to work with people to figure out what are those things so that we can make you excited.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the beauty, I think, of working. It's why a lot of us became NDs, is because we take that. I know, there's that little bit of extra time in these longer appointments where I can ask the question, hey, these are the 2 or 3 things that we know you need to do to reach the goals that you've identified. Let's take a minute and figure out how we're going to do them. And then let's check back in for, even it's a shorter visit in a couple weeks and what's worked and what hasn't, because it's not about having like, okay, you need to get this much protein, move this much and do that, and we'll see you later. It's really, the magic is in, so for me, I always say that my longest standing relationship is with my coffee, which we're working on because there's not always great as I've gotten older.
Not all relationships are good.
Sometimes they need some adjustment. But for me, my supplements are in like a container next to my coffee pot, and I'm not allowed to have my coffee in the morning until I've eaten my protein and I've had my supplements. Yes, I have to hold myself accountable to that. And is there a Saturday morning where I have my coffee first? Yes, there is. But once you get in, like, again, stacking. So take a habit that, you do. If you brush your teeth every day, if you go to the bathroom and wash your face first thing in the morning, put them there. Those are all things. And, but what I have found in seeing patients is that everybody has a bit of a unique situation, and absolutely there's ways to come up with, how are we
Creative
going to focus?
solutions.
Yeah. And then it becomes a doable non-negotiable. And that's where you get into this flow of, okay, I don't have to think about it anymore. But initially there's some effort and some strategy and some building into it. And then when things shift and there's a transition, then you have a base, it's important. And it actually becomes easier to then figure out, okay, I already know how important this is to my health and my energy. So you figure out, it actually becomes easier to figure out how to make it work. That's
Right.
again, that's where it really becomes a non-negotiable. You're like, I know this is important and things didn't go as planned, but I'm able to get it in anyways. And that does take time and it takes support, but it is achievable regardless of how, what access you have to resources. And we're all different there. I think that's an important point where you were talking about spending some money or having appointments, gym appointments. I've had this conversation with my therapist where, we both see a lot of women, and often, especially for women who are managing a lot, whether it's work, households, etc., success isn't as achievable if they don't have some sort of appointment or accountability. And so, I can't do that all at once, right? Like, but if my focus right now, the non-negotiable that I'm working on is movement, then I'm going to try and take some of my resources and put it into, do I have the ability to have a trainer? Maybe I don't. Maybe I get an app. Maybe I have a couple mom friends that it's just once a week we're getting together. There's lots of options, but we are often needing some sort of external accountability when we're starting that up. And that's okay. And there's lots of different ways to do it. And then once that's solidified, it is amazing how then you can put that energy into the next.
Well, and honestly, to piggyback off of this a little bit, one of the things, the non-negotiable that I'm working on in some ways with reference to sleep is I acknowledge that the evenings get away from me. Like the kids go down and it's like, again, prepping for the next day. I love a prep, but I find that it's easy to stay in that. And then I still want a little bit of time for me. I want some time to wind down. And so I've actually had to start setting an alarm on my phone. One, I really encourage people to utilize the nighttime routine on your phone, that it makes your phone look like dark and unappealing and all of those things come at certain hours. It blocks all of my notifications other than the handful of people that I have kind of for emergency purposes who get to come through. And it also sends this like funny little chime. And I know that's my, time to start to think about winding down chime, because I used to set an alarm to get ready to go to bed like a half hour before bed, and it failed 100% of the time. And so what I had to acknowledge is this is how my brain works. I need at least an hour and 15 minutes notice for bed, which it seems crazy, but is true, because I needed like 15 minutes to be like, okay, wrap up what you're doing. And then I need to do my nighttime routine, which my husband laughs at me consistently because back in the day when I used to drink a little bit more heavily, I could be a little bit inebriated and would still be like, I need to do my routine. Like, and everyone is like, you are incapable of doing said routine. And I was like, fight me. And so I am really a creature of habit. And as time goes on, I've piggybacked a couple of extra things on, and I'm like, this routine is getting a little out of hand. I kind of need to wind it down. But in terms of like skincare and brushing teeth and the night guard and the eye mask and the foot cream, and I look not appealing going to bed, but it cues me for sleep so well. And so as much as I'm not getting as much sleep as I would always like, I'm like religious unintentionally. This does such good things for my nervous system about what my routine looks like. And it's nothing fancy, but with that alarm going off early, it also allows me enough time to read before bed. I've recently, I want to say it's been about a year, got an e-reader and changed everything. I was so resistant. I was like, I don't want one of these, but silly as it is, I'm like having something with like the dim light, and I can read with the lights off. It doesn't bug my partner. I can be in bed sideways. It doesn't hurt my wrist. Was like crucial to me being able to read consistently. So again, I had to leverage something in order to make that a consistent change. And one, I've never read more than I have since making that change, which has been really excellent for self-care. But two, it's gotten me off of my phone more often than not, there's still the occasional slip up. I find when stress gets high and then I have to check myself and be like, why are you doing that? That's not helping. Anybody who got any funny memes from me last night at 11, you didn't. But that has been a really helpful part of all of this. But I have the alarm that goes off an hour and 15 early. I have my wrap up time. I do my routine and then I read. And that is more often than not part of what I'm doing. And it makes just such a huge difference. But I had to, like I said, be honest with myself about like, this isn't working. Why is it not working? And how do I change it so that makes sense for me? Right.
Yeah.
Do you relate to any of this in any capacity?
Yeah. So it's really funny because I've joked around in my life. I don't know if it's, a tendency towards ADHD or whatever it is, but routines have always been really difficult for me from the time I was really little. So I literally have had to leverage. I always managed. I was okay. I managed when I was just taking care of myself in my 20s or whatever. I wouldn't say again, but there was a lot of chaos around. When my older kids were younger, I had sticky notes everywhere. Like I just needed a visual cue of like, okay, brush your teeth. Like it really was, and I had to take some of these like again, I have anchored a lot in my life around having coffee in the morning because it was something I consistently did. So
you didn't have to think about that once. You're like, how can I stack?
Exactly. And I would have to remind myself it's easier these days, again, with some of the technology. And I still struggle with it. And it's just something about myself I've had to accept. It was not helping me to try and white knuckle and willpower my way through. So I spent a lot of time, where's the barrier here? How do I reduce it? Where can I offload this decision making? And so, yeah, like I have an app on my phone that blacks out all of the apps and I have to go through a pretty difficult process, like to open up.
What's the name of the app?
The one I'm using right now is Be Present. I've tried a few other ones. Yeah. So, and there's paid versions and unpaid versions of these things, depending, right? Like there's lots of options. I think those are the things that have made, a few of these habits possible for somebody that really does struggle. So at nighttime, for me, this sleep is the thing, I say meal planning is an anchor, but realistically, there are two things every day where I have lots of reminders for gratitude. I know that sounds kind of corny, but I can get quite negative when things are stressful. And so I need reminders to be like, okay, what is going okay? So I have one on my phone at the end of the day, and I have a couple in my office where I spend a lot of my time being like, okay. And I've taught myself some cues that when I know I'm feeling a certain way in my body, the gratitude does not get rid of the stress, but it does help me to re-regulate so that I can deal with it. So that is one and I try to do that at night. And I've tried the journals and stuff. That does not work for me. I just think it, and that's about right. Like,
well, and this is again, you meet yourself where you're at. Like I think that there's so much comparison that we could do, even between us as colleagues or like publicly with other people. Cause the age of social media, you can see what everybody is doing and be like, oh, even in this conversation, there might be some things where you're like, oh, I'm not doing that. I should be. I think that the shoulds are not helpful. And sometimes trying to figure out what the actual feeling is and what it's telling you, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's some envy there or there's some judgment or whatever it might be, is just figuring out what that is, why it's there, and then how do we actually do something that makes sense for you? Because what works for one may not work for the other. Well, and it's just what works. Where are you at? What can we do for you? Right.
Yeah. And I think this conversation has been a really good example because you and I, we both been practicing for quite a long time. We both have kids. We both have partners that work outside the house, like a lot of similarities, and we do things very differently, but we have similar goals, right? So it just goes to show you that there really is there's so many different ways to accomplish it. And everybody's is, what I find though, is that the non-negotiables are often they're at the end of the day, the things that we need to do on a day-to-day basis or that we're striving to do most days are quite similar. There's some nuances in and out, but it's really in the how to achieve them that I think working with naturopathic doctors that's where that magic is. That yes, do I give a lot of my patients recommendations around sleep and nervous system and food and movement? You bet. But how that happens and the order that it happens in and the importance and where we make it shine in their life, that's where each individual plan is a little bit different. And 100%. That's what makes it achievable. Yeah.
100%. And the one thing I'll say before we kind of wrap up relative to that is, again, if capacity is low and energy is low, figuring out why that is, right? Is there a sleep thing? Is there a nutrition thing? Is there a thyroid thing? Can we fix the capacity? And then how do we make something realistic for you? But I wholeheartedly agree.
I think I say capacity about 10 times in every visit. We're just talking about like, whether it's your metabolism or your energy or your mental health, right? Like your nervous system. This is a conversation that we have to have. It's like, and habits and non-negotiables, they can increase capacity, but we really do need to. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's life and transition. And sometimes, yeah, you know what? Actually, there's an iron issue here or a thyroid issue or a combination of all of these things. So, yeah.
Wholeheartedly. I think this podcast has gotten away from us. I'm like, we're going to
Probably.
reel it in because I'm like, I could keep going for, like, I haven't even skimmed the top of this, but we'll save that for another podcast episode. It sounds like our big takeaways are, as we just said, it's finding imperfect consistency. It's working with a team that makes sense. If you are somebody who is struggling and you don't know where to start, or you're looking for somebody to hold you accountable, to figure things out, to listen, to hold space, our Advanced Women's Health team is fantastic. Again, incredibly biased. We do offer free 15-minute consults if you're on the fence or you want to make sure that you're a good fit or whatever that might be. So please reach out if that's something that's interesting to you. And thank you for joining us and looking forward to catching you guys on the next one.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you had as much fun as we did. And if you loved today's episode, share it with a friend and leave us a review. That is how we spread this message, and that is how we are going to revolutionize healthcare in Canada for women. Have a beautiful day and be well.